I love the airbrushed photos. And I've been asked probably about 100 times this last week what I think of what's going on with the women's movement around the world now. And having been doing futures research for 50 years, I can tell you that I've seen this come and go a number of times, and it kind of brings back one of my earliest fun memories of the beginning of Saturday Night Live. Back in the early 70s, when they did one of their wonderful advertising spoofs, and it was about the modern version of the woman, the working woman. And it showed a beautifully made-up woman, beautifully clothed, walking into a 5,000 square foot, immaculately clean kitchen with several bags of groceries, and she put them down on the counter and looked at the camera and she said, "Hi, I'm a biophysicist and a mother of 4. She started unpacking the groceries and she said, "Yep, I volunteer at the hospital and I do run the carpool." She's unpacking and looks at the camera and says, "What's that? Oh, my favorite hobbies? Well, they would have to be skydiving and deep sea diving." And she finished unpacking and folded up these bags and put them neatly away and looked back at the camera and she said, "What's that? You want to know how I do all of this? I'm on speed." And I thought then, that's a great ad. Great product, very effective, and the fact of the matter is, so true. Because even then, 50 years ago, we were all on speed, and it is becoming increasingly true with every passing year and every passing moment. In fact, the story of what's going on is not change, but it is the speed of change. We've looked at the transformation of economies over time. Others have, but we've categorized them in our own way and basically have come to believe that these transformations, these global economic fundamental transformations, occur as a result of disruptive technologies coming together, and in coming together, creating enormous efficiencies. What does that mean? Efficiencies mean that you can do these things without people anymore. And that's what happened when we started the agricultural economy. That's what happened when we started the industrial economy. That's what happened when we started the post-industrial. That's what happened when in 1992 we identified a new economy that we called the immotile and said then that somewhere around the year 2005 to 7, we would see massive layoffs yet again around the world, and we call this new economy that we're in the metaspace. Now understand that we were in the agricultural for thousands of years, in the industrial for 200, in the post-industrial for 45. In 1992, we looked ahead and we said, well, we may have 25 years out of this immotile economy, and the next one that comes maybe will last for 12. This is the nature of change. We call it templosion, the implosion of time around even the biggest of things, where Fortune 500 companies may have a lifespan of 15 years, where the CEOs of those companies now have a tenure of 6 years. And that is exaggerated because of the Chinese companies' CEOs' tenures. If we eliminated those, the average tenure of a CEO of a Fortune 500 company is now around 3 years. In a few years, the Arctic is going to become a shipping lane. There's something that's called flow, which is it takes 10 to 20,000 hours to learn something so well that you can do it automatically without thinking about it. Through transcranial direct stimulation technology now, we can get that down to a couple of hours. Templosion, the implosion of time around even the biggest of things. So as we look at this current economy that we're in, that we call the metaspace economy, and I'm going to go through it quickly, and don't worry about not catching it all. It's on our website, thefuturehunters.com. You can pick it up all there. But I want to go through it very quickly. because it does tell us where some of the future work will come from, because it tells us where jobs are being created, where disposable income is being spent. And it turns out that that's about 9 different value propositions that all reflect some aspect of the alteration of the dimension of space. Inner space, outer space, cyberspace, microspace, time space, design space, storage space, play space, and interspace. So I'm going to go through those very quickly one at a time. Inner space is the understanding of what makes living things tick. We know that plants have brains. We know that animals have brains. And we are increasingly being able to study those and extract economic benefit from that knowledge. One little tidbit, it turns out that sharks off the coast of Australia are actually calmed by the heavy metal music of AC/DC. So you know that your country is not normal in the normal state of things. So we're also doing a lot of work on the study of the human brain and understanding it and understanding a lot of things about it. If we move from inner space to outer space, we know that there are huge industries that are now being created in terms of space exploration, space exploitation, and even the idea of intelligences from other worlds and trying to understand those possibilities and what they might be. If we think about microspace, that's at the nano level. You hear a lot about 3D printing, but there's also 4D printing. And I don't know if you have all been exposed to 4D printing, but that's where you can take something, print it 3D, and because of the properties of what you've printed, at some point later in time, time being the variable, it will turn into something else. So for example, I might take this paperclip, print it in 3D, and send it up to space, add water, and it can expand into part of a space station. Or I might take a piece of paper and print it in origami style and then send it out to a military arena somewhere in the world, and it will unfold into a hospital tent. Imagine what that's going to do to the need for people in the world of security. Because how will anybody know if what you started with is what you're ending with? If you get on an airplane anywhere in the world today, you could be carrying anything with you to where you're going, and nobody would even know what it is until it ends up being what it is. And what does that do to shipping? The whole shipping industry that is basically subsidized by size and weight. We're still going to need a shipping industry. So we're going to have to figure out all of the new jobs that are going to be created around those things that can determine what something is when it's printed, what it's worth, how it's taxed, where it's going. If we think about microspace, we also think about something we call bang fuel. B-A-A-N-G-F-U-E-L. B-A-A-N-G-F-U-E-L. And that 2 A's are important because if you Google it with 1, you're likely to get to a porn site. So, bang fuel, bits, atoms, antimatter, neurons, genes, frequencies and vibrations, and ultra and infraspectral energy/light. That's a big mouthful, but what it means is that the combinations and recombinations of those components are going to lead to whole new businesses, whole new industries, whole new materials, and even whole new energy sources. If I ask you to think about sources of energy, and you've heard a lot about that before today, sources of energy, you might say solar, hydrothermal, fossil fuel, geothermal. Wind, the fact of the matter is that everything in the universe is energy. Everything. There is no such thing as solid matter anywhere in the universe. Down to its quantum level, everything is energy, and in the future, we will have whole industries around that. There's no reason why your cell phone cannot be powered by your heartbeat. There's no reason why the lights in this building cannot be powered by your footsteps as you entered the building under the tiles downstairs. Bang fuel. We are going to see combinations and recombinations of so many things, life forms, not life forms, combination forms. If we think about cyberspace, we are just at the infancy of the businesses and industries that will be underpinned by cyberspace. One example, we are moving out of the world of education and into the world of learning. Those are two different things. I hear all the time people say, isn't this wonderful? We can now get the most brilliant biology teacher in the world to come online and teach us biology, and they can teach millions of people around the world biology. Isn't that wonderful, the democratization of education? And I think that's pouring old wine into new bottles. Why would you do that? When through virtual reality immersion technology, you can become a white blood corpuscle, swim through a bloodstream and fight off all kinds of invading bacteria and viruses, and learn more in 10 minutes having fun in a video game about immunology than any teacher could teach you in 20,000 hours. Why would you want the best archaeology teacher in the world when you can live in ancient civilizations? And you might live in one for a week, and then in another for a week, and what you would need is a guide to ask you why you think the pottery is different between these two villages that you have just lived in. And that might be because one was tropical, one was a desert. Guides in virtual reality, something we have never thought of as work before, but there will be many of them. Time space. Leveraging time as an economic variable in the delivery of goods and services is becoming huge. We never really valued that in the economy before, except in the time value of money, but time is becoming a business. Design, we hear design thinking in everything, and we know design is becoming a really important and growing area of work. And Lord knows we need it, because we are surrounded by poor design everywhere. Those of us who are women in the audience and travel around the world, we know this, because we go to airports with our luggage and we go into the ladies' room, and if you manage to get into a stall with your luggage, you're lucky, but you ain't ever getting out again. And these things are right in front of our nose. The work that needs to be done is endless. Storage space. We're running out of room in our brains to store things. We're running out of room to store our personal junk. We're running out of room if we think about nuclear. We're running out of room to store data. We have to think about storing data in genetic codes and in holograms. Storage space. Play space. Play is becoming a significant form of business. Not only do children need play, but adults need play, and it makes a difference in their lives. It keeps them healthier, it makes them more productive, and whole new businesses will emerge around the idea of play. And then, of course, interspace, which is, I don't consider it the Internet of Things. I think it's going to be the Internets of Things. I think there are going to be multiple platforms out there that will have distinct competitive advantages, but certainly they will create whole new businesses and grow jobs. So I understand, I get that millions of people are going to be put out of work by the new technologies, not just the drivers, but even the ones that we think are the newly growing areas. For example, home health aides, one of the fastest growing areas of employment. But that too will be disintermediated by caring and multisensory and smart and social robots. You heard before that we're looking at this growing world of Bitcoin and blockchain. But what happens when quantum computing comes along and blows that all up? And that's going to happen really soon. Templosion. It is the speed of change, not just change. But we will create, over time, millions of other jobs. We will. If I think about just one area, agriculture and food. Point, The northern region countries, including Russia and Russia's Siberia, may become the breadbaskets of the future because of climate change. Point: the majority of people on Earth now live in cities. That is creating a whole different future for food and agriculture than we have ever had on this planet before. Point: the world is going to need to boost food production by 70% over the next decades to feed over 9 billion people and to ensure enough usable water to produce this food. So even as we watch Cape Town, South Africa become potentially the first city on the planet to run out of water, we know that we have enormous work to do in the fields of food and agriculture ahead. So Fareed Vakaria's answer to all this is that we need to harness the human response. And this is what we're doing in conjunction with advanced technology, in conjunction with AI, the human response. So we know, for example, that precision agriculture allows farmers to precisely know every inch of the field that they are farming. We see many, many people showing renewed interest in becoming farmers. Isn't it ironic that in an age of advanced technology, there are people who are desiring to go back and become one of the oldest professions in the world? We know that humans, coupled with technology, are building experimental underwater greenhouses off the coast of Italy, using the sea's steady temperatures and the high concentrations of carbon dioxide to do that. We know that commercial properties, including major baseball leagues, are using the land that they own that is not doing anything right now to grow food, vegetables, herbs. Urban landscaping is creating new jobs not just in horticulture, but in agriculture. Innovations in 3D printing. We know that food is already being printed, but now NASA's trying to figure out how we print food for astronauts. And there is a pizza in the work that has a 30-year shelf life, which is what my son insists is everything in my refrigerator currently. Space food is a whole new career. The moon is becoming our 8th continent. We're going to be mining asteroids very soon. And there are already 200,000 people signed up for the first Mars mission in the 2020s. There will be agriculturists working with mining and geological engineers, astrophysicists, and planetary civil engineers to design foods for orbital and planetary surfaces where tens of thousands of people may be housed and at work. So humans and advanced technology working together can also create innovations in hacking food waste. And this is huge. The global amount of food wasted each year is about 1 billion tons. And it's estimated that 1/3 of all the food that is produced on this planet is never consumed. 1/3. So new technology is allowing suppliers in the food chain to post alerts about the excess food that they're trying to sell or give away. And that allows people to work differently, and many more of them, in food banks and soup kitchens and farmers who can increasingly connect the delivery companies and the distributors and the wholesalers and the restaurants together as they need to get rid of the food they have. There's a mobile app that has already allowed people to recover about 700,000 pounds of unused food in the San Francisco area and deliver that to 500,000 homeless people. So basically, people are building companies now and are employed in figuring out ways to get food to the people who don't have it. There's a creative group of students who started a company called Fopo Food Powder. And what they do is they collect cheap and nearly expired produce, and they spray dry it into a powder so that it has a shelf life of 2 years. So the jobs that are being created to solve the food waste problem, many, countless. We're hacking nutrition. We know that nutrition is not just about the food that we eat, but that most of our nutrition comes from the sun, that it is the light waves in light and in color that actually feeds us, and that's why we eat the rainbow. That's why we eat all different colors of food, because that's how the sun converts its energy so that we can use it as food, but we can get it directly as well. And so the entire field of nutrition is substantially changing, and we're seeing whole new careers now emerging in everything from genetic targeting of nutrition to light wave nutrition engineering. Never heard of these jobs before. Augmented reality. Food companies are hiring gamers to create fun, interactive packaging. By the thousands, they're hiring these people. Local bakeries are going to be offering design jobs. Disney has patented an AR program so that on top of your cake or your food, you can see exploding volcanoes or snow-capped mountains, waterfalls, whatever you want to see, right there on top of your food. Who ever thought of an AR food designer before? And talking about sensory engagement, how many senses do you have? 5? Some people might say 6. Really? Really? Whatever happened to your sense of balance, your sense of height, your sense of time, your sense of speed, your sense of direction? Certainly, I don't know where mine went. We have so many senses that we have ignored, and we know that when we pay attention to them, we grow whole businesses and employ millions of people. Because what we've done with the senses that we understood was create the entertainment business and the fragrance business. And we will be creating whole new businesses around our attention to these new senses. An example in food. There is a spiritual belief and a scientific kind of unfolding truth that humans can sense the earth in a kind of electromagnetic way. Sense. So there's a chef in Finland who built a restaurant 80 meters down in a limestone mine so that people could have their food next to the earth. Sounds crazy, but that's what innovation is. That's what creativity is. That's what entrepreneurship is. Seeing what we are learning and making whole new businesses out of it. And of course, this doesn't even scrape the surface where it comes to the explosive businesses that are occurring in edibles that are consciousness expanding and increasingly legalized around the world. And then there's the gamification of agriculture. Farmville might be one of the first examples that comes to mind, but what if we gamified real-world Farmvilles that leverage the human desire to compete? We know that in the future, more work will be gamified, crowdsourced and gamified. So using gamification with points and credits and badges and other digital rewards, more people can become interested and involved in agriculture and food-related possibilities. So, agrimagination by itself, imagination in the food and agriculture space, will expand by millions the future of people employed in the workforces around the world, counterintuitively. In an age of advanced technology and AI, farming and farm-related jobs could be some of the most lucrative careers. So let me try some job titles on you that you've never heard of before, that never existed before, such as vertical farmer, food printing specialist, food waste architect, urban agricultural engineer, compost designer, acreage matchmaker, or farm game manager. Make your own list. Make your own list. Could be endless. Because what would happen if we looked at all the degraded and abandoned lands in the world as a blank canvas? And if we imagine a future where much of our food is grown or manufactured indoors in vertical farms, converted warehouses, science labs, and maybe even in our refrigerators, because maybe we turn them into chambers where we use light and sound technologies to more closely match the food that we grow in them with our own genotypes. It's all about imagination. It's all about imagination. Let's look at the world of sports, which employs millions of people. Well, the thing that some of us in the audience who are older used to yell at our kids for doing was staying on their video games all day long instead of paying attention to their studies. Well, now the kids that didn't listen to their parents and stayed on those video games are getting scholarships to universities because esports is emerging. Big time. Big time. League of Champions, there are stadiums that put 30,000 people in seats with 35 million people live streaming, watching people playing video games and winning. This is a new world. Those are new jobs. There are millions of new jobs that are going to be created around esports alone. AI combined with big data. We're going to see something emerge that we call data smithing. Just as engineering was created when machines were born, data smithing is now opening up whole new careers because of the birth of big data. So we might see neuro data smiths and echo data smiths and urban data smiths, creatives, not coders, but creatives, figuring out how to use data, how to collect it, why to collect it, what to do with it. And then, new field called computational anthropology. Did you ever hear that title before? Computational anthropology, which blends biology, economics, computer science, and physics to answer questions about human behavior. These blended things, these new areas, are opening up possibilities that never existed before. And these are not people who are going to be coders. These are creatives who are thinking about the application of data. And then I think we're all going to have some understanding of data, and that's really important because we're heading into a world of an information crisis where because of the ability to manipulate video and sound, imagery, we're not going to trust anything we see. Even if it seems like it comes from somebody we know and love, we won't know it for real. And frankly, I believe that high-functioning autistic persons are going to find a lot of employment in the future because they are not so capable of being directed by social or political norms. They could easily be the truth tellers. And to a certain extent, I think Gene Roddenberry saw that in the creation of Star Trek when he imagined Vulcans. Because I don't know about you, but I was always convinced that Spock was autistic. And then speaking of Roddenberry, he understood something else. Society has elevated the stature of academically trained executive and professional work, but even as radiologists and accountants see much of their work becoming digitized, maintenance workers like plumbers and roofers will still be needed to fix the broken pipes, the leaky roofs, the malfunctioning air conditioning. And in every episode of Star Trek, as important as Captain Kirk and Spock were, it was always Scotty who saved the day. We're going to be living to 100. Many of us, to 100. What does that mean for the future of work? It means there's no way you're going to hold one job for all those years. We're going to see a world in which we move in and out of work, sideways, up, down, different jobs, different professions. It's a world of a choppy life in order to fill a life. And we're not extending life at the end of life. We're extending life in the middle of life. From 35 to 75, we believe we're the same age. And nobody's going to talk us out of that. We may lose a little hair, and we know the market's going to respond to that. And we may lose a little sex function, and we know the market's responding to that. And elastic will take care of the rest. And this is a life phase that has never existed on this planet before. The life cycle that we have now designed for ourselves, living to 100, 35 to 75, the same age, people moving back to their parents' homes, these things never existed before, and they will open up businesses and jobs and opportunities that never existed before. When I was young, we never had life coaches. Now every third person I meet is a life coach. So, I understand that there are going to be millions of people who are out of work, and the social policies that we're going to have to consider range from universal basic incomes, which frankly I don't think are as useful as universal basic access to resources, cooperative living and working solutions, micro-jobbing, and even the idea of taxing robots. Those are all out there, and these are serious issues. But in the end, there will be a lot of new jobs and a whole new world of work out there in the future. And I mean a new world of work, because I'm going to give you another way of looking at how we chunk changes, big changes that we've been through. Because I said earlier that we were now in the microspace economy, but that time was shrinking. So now the question is, where do we go after that? If this is hardly going to last anymore, what comes after? And I know what the scientific delineations of the history of human civilizations are, and I'm going to ignore them, and I'm going to give you my own take on what I categorize them as, because I just need to make things simple so I can see and understand them. And I just give human civilization 4 categories. Civilization Delta was the first difference between what was human and not human on this planet. Civilization Gamma was the harnessing of power in service of humans. And we can date that from, Civilization Delta, we could date back anywhere from 2 million years ago to 150,000 years ago. Civilization Gamma, anywhere from 150,000 years ago to maybe 15 to 6,000 years ago, depending upon your science or what you're looking at, from the fire to the wheel. Civilization Beta, the first large-scale aggregations of communities and the use of agriculture, and that, again, probably dates somewhere back from 6,000 years ago to today. We are still in Civilization Beta, but we are now crossing over into Civilization Alpha. And the reason that is Alpha, the major, the biggest, the end, is because now we can do 3 things simultaneously. We can leave this planet. We can destroy this planet. And we can consciously design the many futures of the evolution of our own species. And I mean the many futures, because future of humanity is not human beings all looking alike. If we think about genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, robotics, 3D printing, bang fuel, nano self-assembly, BMI, brain-machine interface, we are going to go off in many different directions. We're going to look very different, be very different. And we're heading into a future in which, if we can keep inspiring our children to imagine, there will be limitless work available for all of them. Because in the end, work is simply one thing. It's the expenditure of energy for the benefit of ourselves and or someone else. And that is limitless. That's absolutely limitless. That's artists, circus performers, ministers, shamans, astronauts, dancers, designers, philosophers, and even the many people who are getting interested now in entering into politics, because they're becoming aware that the way things were are not going to work for the world that we're creating. And if we stick with the old, politics is what it says. Poly, many, ticks, those little things that get under your skin. And so there are a lot of people who are saying no more, and I want to do this differently. And certainly in the United States, we see thousands of people now putting their names on ballots to run for office. So I want to leave you with two images in your mind. Two. One, and both of these gentlemen lived at the same time. The first had no technology available for years. For years, spent time in a prison cell alone, with no access to technology, but was able to use his mind to do work such that when he emerged from that cell years later, he changed a country and inspired a planet. And of course, that was Nelson Mandela. And then we have another man who, because of his illness, is trapped in a body that needs all the technology capability available for him to use his mind to do work to inspire a universe. And that, of course, is Stephen Hawking. Nelson Mandela, Stephen Hawking. Does it matter what humans look like in the future? Does it matter that we may be completely without technology or completely engulfed in technology? It doesn't really. When I was 1 year old, my mother got multiple sclerosis. She became a quadriplegic. I never had a conversation with her, and she was a mind trapped in a body that could do nothing. Nothing. And I would have given anything for her to have the technologies we have available today, and that we will in the future. There will be work for everyone who wants it, for the cans who can imagine, for the new industries that are being created, the problems that need to be resolved. And yes, AI will erase a lot of jobs, but not humanity. We'll be working well into the future. Thank you.